Și acum hai să ne uităm, chat, la clipul de la Voizila. Și mai avem un clip nou postat de către Coffeezilla astăzi. Ne uităm la asta, după aia la celălalt și după aia vreau să ne uităm la alea cu românii.
And it is incredible. Huge bombshells about some of the most powerful people on the planet. I can't believe.
Aia cu Bill Gates mi se pare crazy. Bro, când i-o cerut medicamente de STD pentru că a luat Bill Gates STD-uri de la un Russian hooker și i-o cerut lui Epstein medicamente pentru STD și i-o băgat lui nevastă sa pe ascuns medicamentele respective. Greșesc? Așa era povestea, din câte știu așa. I-o dat blackmail că avea STD? Crazy. Văzusem un TikTok despre, scuză, îmi pare rău că râd despre o chestie care este așa de serioasă și așa mai departe, dar mă piși pe mine, bro. Mă piși pe mine de râs când văd TikTok-urile astea.
Let me see that pussy.
You know how that's right.
Man, let me see that pussy, man.
They let some of this stuff out. I mean, it is stunning. Honestly, one of the biggest lies we've seen is the idea that the FBI could possibly come to us and say, not only is there not a client list, there was no credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. Guys, we're about to see planned blackmail to one of the most powerful people on the planet, and that is Bill Gates. Listen, there's a lot we're going to get to, but we have to start with probably the craziest revelation here, which is Jeffrey Epstein emailing himself about Bill Gates. Now, if you don't know, Bill Gates and Epstein had a relationship post 2008. That's a big year. You're going to hear a lot today because 2008 was the time that Epstein pled guilty for soliciting of somebody under the age of 18. He was a predator at this point. Everybody knew it. Now, eventually, Bill Gates would get divorced when all of this came out. Melinda Gates said it was part of the direct cause for the divorce. She said she met Epstein and said he was evil.
He was evil personified.
So you have to understand, this is like Bill Gates' kryptonite. He's one of the richest men on the planet. He's got this huge philanthropy arm. But this relationship with Epstein has been a huge problem for him. And Epstein appears to have known that because in 2013...
Bro, îți dai seama dacă Bill Gates, care e între cei mai puternici oameni, au rămas pe lângă Epstein când viața lui literalmente se prăbușea, să zic așa, cât de cât, din cauza lui Epstein, îți dai seama cu ce avea ăsta la mână.
Bill Gates appears to be distancing himself from Jeffrey Epstein, and Epstein seems to have a problem with that. He says, I assume the dedication to our relation went both ways. Larry has now asked me to recommit to a confidentiality agreement. Basically, he's got to shut up about his relationship with Bill Gates. And this is where the blackmail starts, and it comes in the form of like, if I were you, I would do X if I were the type of guy that you should be. He says, in that regard, I suggest I buy you the house that you had your heart set on. In addition to 5 years of severance, we'll buy you out of the investment contract we agreed upon, 30 to 40% of an $100 million partnership for $30 million in today's terms. That's what I would have done had I been in your shoes. Then he lays out what he has on Bill Gates, or what he says he has. Quote, to add insult to injury, you subsequently, with tears in your eyes, implore me to delete the emails I had regarding your STD. Your request that I provide you antibiotics that you could surreptitiously give to Melinda, and the description of your I mean, this is insane. It's completely insane. It's like basically laying out in text form, I would give me millions of dollars, and I can't believe you're asking me to delete the message where you were going to give STD medication to your wife without her knowledge. I mean, it's complete. It's crazy. It's just completely obvious what he's doing here. It's just a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Here's what you should do. But now that coming out after Epstein's death, this looks really bad for Gates, obviously, because you usually wouldn't blackmail somebody for something that's completely false or fake. I mean, maybe he did that. But we also know Bill Gates had affairs. Obviously, Melinda credits it for their divorce. So it's hard to believe there was nothing sketchy going on. Bill Gates, of course, maintains that it was completely above board. He says the fact this allegation was in here just shows how much Epstein was willing to defame people. But Epstein lays it out. He says he helped Bill get drugs in order to deal with the consequences of sex with Russian girls, facilitating his illicit trysts with married women, and to being asked to provide Adderall for bridge tournaments. Look, guys, this is exactly what we suspected the whole time.
Whoa.
Epstein was providing services to rich people and expecting payment via blackmail. Now you might say, and it's true, that we don't know that Epstein ultimately sent that version of an email to Gates. All we know is he sent that to himself. He may have planned...
Coaie, bridge. Nu-i joc de la de cărți. Îi trebuia lui Bill Gates Adevarul să se ducă să facă la turnee de bridge. Nu e ceva joc de cărți sau ceva joc de ăsta.
Blackmail and
Crazy.
has been drafting something. But what we do know are two things. The Wall Street Journal has reported that Gates was threatened by Epstein over an affair. We also know that after this blackmail email Jeffrey sent to himself was written, eventually
Deci, cel mai probabil Jeffrey Epstein avea o grămadă de oameni influenți pe lângă el, se împrietena cu ei și ori îi făcea să facă niște lucruri crazy și după aia avea evidence asupra lor și avea blackmail, ori oamenii respectivi, din cauza faptului că probabil aveau încredere în Epstein, se duceau la ei cu request-uri de astea, cum a fost Bill Gates cu asta cu STD-ul. Și după aia avea la mână, pentru că orice s-ar fi întâmplat, putea să dea mereu leak la chestia respectivă și nimeni nu voia să își piardă gen, pana mea, credibilitatea sau să ajungă în închisoare pentru căcaturile pe care le fac. Și omul se folosește de chestia să facă bani, să-și facă influență. Bine, asta de la oamenii ăștia care s-au folosit de chestiile astea, dar când vine vorba de ăia care se duceau și participau la ritualurile alea pe care le făceau ei și la chestiile alea cu CP și așa mai departe. Ăia ce scuzau?
Gates sent a $2 million donation to MIT directed by Jeffrey Epstein, which is a bit weird if you had distanced yourself from the guy and y'all had this big falling out. Now again, do we know for sure that Bill Gates did all of that? No, of course we don't. But do I think Bill Gates was innocently looking for charity advice from a after he already pled guilty? No, I don't. I'm sorry, I'm not that gullible. And speaking of not that gullible, we've been lied to also by another richest guy on the planet. Geez, it's a shock why they don't want to put this out. Elon Musk, who has been saying for years that it is a lie that he went to Epstein's island. In fact, he says he refused to go. From Elon, he says, Epstein tried to get me to go to his island. I refused. He says, anyone pushing this false narrative deserves complete contempt. Later responding to another headline which said Elon Musk planned trip to Epstein's private island, and he says, this is false. But of course, we start to dig through the files, and we can see on Epstein's calendar that Elon Musk is booked in December 6th of 2014. But maybe you don't believe that. That's just the word of Jeffrey Epstein. But maybe you'll believe the word of Elon Musk, who was caught emailing Jeffrey Epstein to go to his island post the guilty plea. Elon Musk writes, "Will be in BVI St. Bart's area over the holidays. Good time to visit." Jeffrey Epstein says, "I will send a heli for you." Later, Elon Musk writes to Epstein, probably just to Lula and me, his ex-wife, what day and night would be the wildest party on your island?
Voia Elon Musk, mâncați aici cele mai nebune party-uri voia. Cele mai nebune party-uri, voia să se ducă la cele mai nebune party-uri.
The world's richest man is asking the most pedophile man for the wildest party on his island. And then it gets more explicit. In 2012, remember, this is the guy who said, I refused it, I could never do that, right? It's false. But here in 2012, he says, do you have any parties planned? I've been working to the edge of my sanity this year. I really want to hit the party scene in St. Bart's or elsewhere and let loose. The invitation is much appreciated, but a peaceful island experience is the opposite of what I'm looking for. Guys, he can't even play the...
Mamă, îi trebuie de numai nebunii, frate. What the fuck? Dar nu a fost Elon? În aia, cine știe?
To go study math. Excuse.
Aici pare că Epstein a trimis un elicopter să-l ia pe Elon Musk să-l aducă pe
what all these
insulă.
guys do. They say, hey, I just went to go talk to scientists. Elon's like, hey, I don't want to do that. I'm looking for a party. That's what I'm here to do. And then Jeffrey Epstein writes, understood, I will see you on St. Barth. The ratio on my island might make your ex-wife uncomfortable. I can't believe these guys are lying to us and people are swallowing it still, thinking that Elon Musk had nothing to do with this guy. So again, that's 2012. That's 2014. But guess what? There's another time in 2013. I mean, this seems like a yearly thing with the boys. Here, once again, Elon Musk writes, we'll be in the BVI St. Bart's area over the holidays. Again, is there a good time to visit? Jeffrey Epstein, any day, 1st to the 8th, play it by ear if you want, always space for you. They then plan some more, and you might think, well, if Elon ever told the truth, this is when he has to reject, right? Because he said, I refused. But actually, it appears to be one of those cases where, like, your friend says, like, oh, bro, I dumped her. And actually, it was the other way. Yeah, it turns out Elon didn't dump the p***. The p*** dumped Elon. He says, bad news. Unfortunately, my schedule will keep me in New York. Hopefully, we can schedule another time in the future. Jeffrey Epstein let Elon down. That's actually the real story. is the reason he didn't go in 2013 was because he couldn't go. Jeffrey Epstein was not there. Guys, I mean, how blatant do they have to make it before we start to just see through it, right? When they issue these ridiculous denials, they're totally associated with the guy after the guilty plea. They lie through their teeth, but they can't even keep their story straight. I mean, that's what's crazy. They're not even competent at this. They get caught in their own lies all the time. Remember, the FBI's official story was they didn't blackmail. Well, before we even had these files, Howard Lutnick was on the record calling Jeffrey Epstein the greatest blackmailer ever.
So how come Bill Gates and all these other people could hang around him and not see what you saw? Or did they see it and ignore it? Or
No, they participated.
Right.
That's what his MO was, get a massage. And what happened in that massage room, I assume was on video. This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever.
Interesting.
Damn! Dar la asta mă gândeam și eu. Exact același lucru mă gândeam și eu. Exact același lucru. Bă, am văzut și chestia aia cu Michael Jackson că a fost, dar am văzut și poza care a fost postată în Epstein Files cu Michael Jackson și era o poză cu copiii lui și cu Trump, dacă nu mă înșel. Era o poză cu Trump, cu Michael Jackson și cu copiii lui Michael Jackson și s-au cenzurat copiii și părea foarte că Michael e un ciudat din poza aia, știi ce zic? Când acolo erau doar copiii lui și oamenii au cenzurat poza respectivă, au aruncat în Epstein Files. Mie mi se pare că există și încercări din astea de la oamenii mari și suspuși că cu poze normale de la alți oameni, editate, băgate în Epstein Files, făcute special ca să se vorbească despre marele vedete cum sunt acolo în Epstein Files cu poze normale, care nu au fost implicate, ca să se ia spotlight-ul de pe oamenii care făceau sacrificii cu copii, cu și mâncau intestine la pe iaht. Și să nu mai zic de ce mai făceau, că nu cred că am voie să vorbesc despre asta pe YouTube. Poate multe poze îți ai, cine știe, dar uite, am văzut aici fix când am fost la baie acum, stai așa, la nou jumper am văzut, dacă nu mă înșel. Da, uite aici. Uite. A photo of Post Malone and Dan Bilzerian with two women was found in the Epstein files. E legit o poză de pe Instagram, probabil o pusă la story. Dan Bilzerian posted this image with Post Malone to Facebook in 2018. Pe Facebook a fost în 2018. Why was this included in the Epstein files? Cu femeile cenzurate, să le sfat doar picioarele să vadă că sunt femei. Să-l portretizeze pe Dan Bilzerian, care oricum e un ciudat, și pe Post Malone, care ăsta nu e ciudat, ca fiind doi ciudați. Every pic I posted on my IG is in the files with girls' faces blacked out. Wow. We need public execution for everyone implicated in Epstein child așa, trafficking and torture rituals. The Epstein files are a Democrat hoax. Trump is such a piece of shit for gaslighting us to protect pentru că și el probabil este unul. Adică am văzut așa pe scurt ce s-a zis despre Trump în Epstein Files. Omul este acolo la cataramă cu Epstein.
Okay, so Howard has a different perspective. Now, if you don't know,
No, uitat de mult la răspunsul meu.
you think he's just telling the truth there? Even this guy who's contradicting the official narrative, this guy literally lived next to Jeffrey Epstein. This guy who's like, I'm going to tell the truth. Those guys participated. That guy lived next to Jeffrey Epstein. And by the way, he lied too. I love this video we're about to get into because this guy, Mr. He's the greatest blackmailer ever, does he know something we don't know? Because it's interesting, Mr. I'm his neighbor had to also explain how he had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. And he lays it out pretty simply. He goes, yep, I lived next to him, but in 2005, I had such a horrible experience that I knew I could never talk to him again.
He was your neighbor for 10 years. How well did you know him?
We move in 2005, okay? Jeffrey Epstein is arrested in like 08, I think, or something like that.
Right.
So knock on the door. His assistant on like a Saturday says, Mr. Epstein, your neighbor would like to invite you over for coffee. And there's a massage table in the middle of the room. Massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he like gets like weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry, we have to go. And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
Well, he couldn't be more clear, could he, right? He says, hey, I may have been his next door neighbor, but I met him once before the 2008 guilty plea. Remember I said that was a big deal?
A fost pe
And
insulă.
we got invited over,
Sau
and
ce?
then it was like 5 seconds, and we left, and we realized he was a creep. We were out of there. He made this rude, lewd comment in front of my wife. I would never go see this guy. I mean, he makes it super clear he's gross.
So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
These other guys, they may have participated,
They participated.
but Howard Lutnick, he could never. No.
Nu l-am
He's too good
văzut,
of a
crazy.
guy. Well, guess what we found in the old emails? Looky. It's Howard Lutnick writing in to Jeffy Boy in 2012. Hi, Jeff. We're landing in St. Thomas early afternoon, planning to head over. Where are you located? What's the exact location for my captain? Does Sunday evening for dinner sound good? Is this the guy you said made a lewd comment to your wife? And, oh,
N-am
I could
ascultat
never be
piesa
in
asta.
front of him. He's gross.
Cabo. N-am
Guess
văzut
what the
piesa.
next email is? My boy's wife messaging in, saying we're headed towards you in St. Thomas. Later, the subject line, Jeffrey Epstein. Good
Deci
morning,
chiar a
Howard.
fost coaie, what the fuck, chiar a fost pe insulă.
Jeffrey wished me to pass you along.
What?
Nice seeing you. They clearly met, and the guy is just lying about it to your face, to the American public's face, and they tried to hide it from us. I cannot emphasize this enough. They're lying through their teeth. You think this guy perfectly remembers a 2005, like, walking in the guy's house? I remember exactly what I said to him. My wife and I looked at each other, and he wouldn't remember the 2012. I boated over to his private island for a dinner. Is that what we're really thinking? Is that what we're expecting
Oare
to
ce
believe?
mâncau?
This is a momentary lapse in his judgment. No, these guys don't even care about being consistent. And they're all throwing each other under the bus. Don't you remember Elon Musk saying the time to drop the really big bomb? Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they haven't been made public. My guy, you also are in the Epstein files, very clearly doing stuff you lied about, okay? So is Howard Lutnick, who says, yeah, Bill Gates, he's probably getting blackmailed because he participated. What did you do on the island over in 2012, Howard? Do we know that? I mean, does anyone care? Now, the last thing I want to talk about is some of the most explosive stuff. It's also, again, I have to say, unverified, okay? This is the NTOC, the FBI's National Threat Operations Center. And the challenge with confirming some of this is that these are anonymous tips, or they black them out at least, so we don't know who they are, and anyone can drop a tip. Now, that doesn't mean that you should disregard them. It just
Deci astea îs mărturii cum ar veni de la oameni și poate oricine să dea o mărturie și e posibil să fie reale, e posibil să nu fie reale.
means we can't verify them. The other challenge is that the FBI
Dar dacă tipurile astea au fost gen blacked out ca să protejeze martorii, că chiar s-a întâmplat chestia asta, știi ce zic?
has a heavy incentive to discredit anything with Donald Trump in it, just because he's in the White House right now, obviously. And so I want to be clear, there are notes related to some of these submissions where they say things like complainant was spoken to and deemed not credible. Additional research showed 3 separate redacted. You know, it's hard to tell how much this is the proper due diligence of the FBI, which they should be doing, of course, and not all complaints are credible. But also there's this obvious conflict of interest with the fact that the sitting president is in some of these complaints. But here
Ne uităm la românii care apar în dosar după videoclipurile astea. Le luăm pe rând, știi ce zic?
they are for what it's worth. Complaint summary. Blank reported an unidentified female friend who was forced to perform on President Trump approximately 35 years ago in New Jersey. The friend told Alexis that she was approximately 13 to 14 years old when this occurred, and the friend allegedly bit President
Forțată să facă sex oral cu președintele Trump acum 35 de ani în New Jersey. Și fata avea 13-14 ani când s-a întâmplat chestia asta. Wow! Și l-a mușcat de coaie pe Trump. Ioi, Doamne ferește! Doamne ferește, bă, ce animale, coaie! Bravo, a făcut fata aia să-mi bag. Doamne ferește, ce animale! Trebuia să-l omoare acolo, ești nebun?
Trump while performing. Friend was allegedly hit in the face after she laughed about biting President Trump. The friend also said she was abused by Epstein. Later, there's very explosive claims about big parties with her, other younger girls, and older Victoria's Secret models, including Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. There's claims third hand about a female victim of Epstein's who wants to publish a book citing Leslie Wexner, Epstein, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Ghislaine Maxwell is in the videos as well. And it goes on like this for a while. Some of the complaints are just like very graphic, and obviously I'm gonna censor out some of it. But I should also mention the DOJ claims that some of these claims were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they had any shred of credibility, they would have certainly been weaponized against President Trump already. Now, I agree that if a complaint is timed right before an election, there definitely could be some other motivations to that. But it's also ridiculous to say that anything in the Epstein files, if it were true, would have come out already. Because why didn't we see the stuff about Bill Gates, for example? I mean, that stuff apparently has been sitting in here for a long time. And not only did no one talk about it, the FBI literally covered for it. I mean, they said that this was not the case. There are big claims against a lot of powerful people. Nobody in that file really wants to rock the boat or release the files because then they get in trouble and their buddies get in trouble. And that's a huge problem. So I don't really buy the idea that, oh, if it were true, it would have already gotten out. I don't buy that. That's why we need transparency. That's why it's important these files are out. But this is just a look at a small fraction of the files. And over the next few weeks, we're going to go through all of the major findings we can from this 3.5 million page document dump. But seriously, think about how discrediting this has been, not only to this administration, but to so many rich and powerful people who have lied through their teeth happily towards you in order to hide their relationship with this man that many of them held post-guilty plea. And some of them, now we know, Epstein prepared blackmail for them and according to reports, threatened. The FBI
Crazy, bro, crazy. Și a zis că voi Zila o mai postat, uite. The Epstein files are getting wrong. Worse, doamne, că wrong îs deja oricum.
It only gets worse from here. We're going back into the 3 million documents. So far, we mostly covered how billionaires lied about their relationship with Epstein and or got blackmailed in the drafts, eventually killing their marriage. We talked about Howard Lutnick, how he lied about meeting Epstein, although he still denies this. And we also talked about some horrible accusations against Trump and Bill Clinton, although we were clear that they are unverified. Now, some people have responded to the release, like Elon Musk, saying that no one fought harder for the full release of the Epstein files than I did. Ironically, he claims that he knew that the playbook of the far left propagandists and legacy media is admit nothing, deny everything, and making counter accusations, saying he had never set foot on Epstein's creepy island or attended parties, despite the fact we saw last time that Elon was asking to be invited to the party. What day and night would be the wildest party on your island? Nevertheless, I think it's an interesting point. The playbook, as we get into this much darker side,
Bro, voia să fie direct la cea mai
you're going to
nebună.
notice this trend is true, that everyone we're going to talk about, basically they admit nothing, they deny everything, and then they usually make counter accusations against other people in the files. Almost no one has faced any kind of consequences for this whole thing, leading me to wonder, why is it that it seems like really only in the rest of the world has anyone faced anything? I mean, you've got the former Prince Andrew losing his title. You've got the Slovakia National Security. You wonder, why is it that it seems like really only in the rest of the world has anyone faced anything? I mean, you've got the former Prince Andrew losing his title. You've got the
Prince Andrew nu-i român. Nu-i regele Andrei.
Slovakia National Security Advisor resigning over the Epstein links. But in America, I'm really hard-pressed to think of anyone who has actually faced any kind of accountability. I think Larry Summers stepped back voluntarily, but other than that, it's hard to...
Am avut regele Andrei la noi, nu? Cum îl cheamă pe regele nostru? Cu aia ce prost că am uitat să mor eu. De informații, ești nebun cu atâția oameni de ăștia importanți, am și uitat cum îl cheamă. Cum îl cheamă pe regele nostru? Regele Mihai, cu aia ce prost să se termina rău de tot. Bă, de la stream-ul ăla cu Andreea Bosnică, podcastul ăla, mi-au prăjit creierii să mă bat, tate, nu. Nu mă uit în viața mea nu mă mai uit. De acum încolo o să ne uităm la chestii cu Andreea Bosnică și de-astea brain rot la final de live, că după să mă culc, să mă pun în pat ca să se regenereze creierul. It's over for me, bro. Prince Andrew, coaie, doamne, ce prost.
Think of anyone who's faced any kind of justice. In fact, arguably, Ghislaine Maxwell's life is better than it was previously since these Epstein files have dropped.
Da, fisul reginei Angliei ăla, Andrew, care arată să mă bat tata de nu zici că e din Simpsons. Prince Andrew. Nu era Prince Andrew ăsta... Sau cum îl chema pe ăla, mă? Care era ăla de arătat, zici că e din Simpsons. Era sensibil băiatul. Sensibil tare. Prințul Charles, așa, da. Regele Charles. Wow, direct. Mamă, nici nu știu dacă am voie să arăt chestia asta pe YouTube. Am voie oare? E cenzurată poza, dar totuși. Pune Gansu o cenzură peste tot. What the fuck, bro? What the fuck? Asta e prințul Charles. Prințul Andrew.
Crazy about this is that we know that the government story is false. Remember, the FBI documents showed they had 10 co-conspirators they were investigating. We also got an old draft of an indictment where they had several co-defendants with Epstein. Now, of course, we know these were never ultimately charged. This was back in 2005, but just imagine all the way back in 2005, where these charges are from, we already had evidence that Epstein was not working alone, and like, of course he's not. But now we're gonna talk a little bit about how the scheme operated. Now, to be clear, we're gonna talk in a second about the laundering of Epstein's reputation, the people who protected him this whole time. But right now, I want to talk about how Epstein got some of these girls in the first place, because the Epstein files provide an interesting look behind the curtains. Obviously, we know Ghislaine Maxwell was helping, whether it be procure the girls, talk them into stuff. But now we have emails of a different side of the scheme. It says, yesterday I spoke to Daniel Syed, who Jean-Luc Brunel describes as a scout or recruiter of girls or women for Jeffrey Epstein. Attached to this incoming email from Brunel is the contact information he has for Syed. And then they blacked out his number and email. But digging into Jeffrey's emails with Daniel shows that he was constantly sending him links to girls. It shows Jeffrey Epstein paying Daniel 3,000 euros, which, to be clear, was the amount that was agreed to by Jean-Luc Brunel. Quote, Dominique, we will pay him 3,000 euros each month for scouting for a 6-month period. On all models we will get him, we will pay him 5% commission on their earnings. Imagine it's like baseball or it's like basketball. You're scouting for, I hate to use the word talent, but that's really what this guy was doing. He was going around the globe trying to find people for Jeffrey Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel. According to one lawsuit, Epstein trafficked a Jane Doe to Jean-Luc Brunel many times. It describes their operation as this: many of the girls came from poor countries or impoverished backgrounds. He lured them in with a promise of making good money. Quote, Brunel has been a model scout for various modeling agencies for many years, and he was apparently able to get U.S. passports for young girls to work as models, eventually, of course, being sent to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it should be noted that Jean-Luc Brunel himself died in prison by hanging, and that's while he was being accused of horrible crimes related to trafficking and minors. So this guy is not a good guy. He was part of the op, along with Daniel Syed, who was also scouting on behalf of Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel. They had their agreement. Here's a sample of how this would work. Jeffrey Epstein asked him to take a full body shot of someone. Daniel Syed said,
Da, uite și aici zice că nu se știe cine este Daniel Syed ăsta, că identitatea lui nu a fost stabilită. Although several unverified photos of Syed are doing rounds on social media. Nu mai arată nimic aici. Da, uite, se ocupa de scouting în multe țări, incluzând Australia, Cuba și majoritatea Europei. Având în vedere că la noi în România se știe care este situația cu human trafficking, cel mai probabil foarte multe dintre fetele astea săracele au fost și din România.
Now she is really skinny, I will do Polaroid. Jeffrey Epstein asks for a copy of her passport and then asks, how many tickets do you want for Woody, meaning Woody Allen? He says 2. Okay, thank you. Full body if possible. And then Jeffrey Epstein says, doesn't look too happy. Comments on her body, and then he says she is very sweet. I'll skip a few of the sordid details here. They comment about her body extensively, and then Jeffrey Epstein says, I sent a request. Does she want to come out
her boobs are awful.
Paris on Sunday? He says, I will invite to come. And this is basically how it worked. Daniel Syed flew around the world looking for women, sending photos to Jeffrey Epstein, who then would get copy of their passports and bring him to the States. Here's an example of this. Daniel Syed brings him a girl. They didn't redact this name, but I'm going to do it. He says, very nice, easygoing, dream to work in United States or visit the United States working as a model in Dubai. He asks age. Daniel says 22 or 23. I forgot to ask her. She looks younger. I have her number if you want to call her. She was going to send this evening. And this happens over and over. At one point, he talks about a Thai actress. Jeffrey Epstein says he can see her on Wednesday, and then he complains that she wants to meet in a restaurant. I don't do that in New York, and then says she didn't even respond. Not nice. The point is, a lot of these girls were looking to come to the United States for one reason or another, for some kind of dream. They would ask for passports or visas, and then ultimately get sent here by this network of people who would later be accused of trafficking or other abuses. Now,
Erika Kirk are interdicție în România pentru că se ocupa cu scouting pentru Epstein.
To be clear, there have not
You
been
confirmed?
charges against Daniel Syed, and the government, remember, says they have no evidence to go even predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So it's a little bit bizarre to be reading about this scouting operation for Jeffrey Epstein, the way he recruited girls. And
Da, aparent nu există confirmare în legătură cu chestia asta, așa scrie aici. Că nu există confirmație dacă Erika Kirk are interdicție sau nu în România. Știați că Erika Kirk este interzisă în România pentru că grupul său evanghelic a fost acuzat de trafic de copii din sate românești? O altă postare susține că minorii ar fi fost transportați către insule private, Marea Britanie și Israel. Ce spun? Până în prezent nu există nicio dovadă publică care să confirme aceste acuzații nici în statele românești, nici autoritățile judiciare sau diplomatice din Statele Unite nu au emis vreo decizie, acuzații sau comunicat oficial privind interdicții de intrare în România ori investigații penale la adresa Ericăi Kirk sau organizației Romanian Angels. Și ci că au vizitat de fapt România de mai multe ori, ci că scrie aici.
then be told, yeah, nothing to see here. Yeah, one of the scouts was like this, like,
I mean,
who himself
nu
in
mai știi
jail,
nimic
but
oricum.
no, there's no one else here, even though there's definitely guys floating around. Even though we literally have redacted defendants in our old draft of an indictment. We have nothing to do. We can't possibly imagine doing anything. And that brings me to one of the frustrating parts of these whole files is the redactions. I mean, I know I've been over this, but it's a different thing. In the past, the files were sort of overly redacted to protect people. The problem this time is not only are a lot of people still being protected, like literally the names of the people they were going to charge, you couldn't argue those are victims, but the work was just done so sloppy that oftentimes you'll find that the DOJ has uploaded two documents that are functionally identical and they redacted one but not the other, letting you see what's ultimately behind the mask, which is dumb because sometimes the thing they're redacting is Jeffrey Epstein's name. Or other times it's somebody who clearly is not a victim because then you see the non-redacted copy and you're like, yeah, that's clearly not a victim. So it's a little strange what they seem to have done here. Let me give you a for instance. So we have this message from somebody whose name is blacked out. And we see participants, and then we see Jeffrey Epstein is involved, right? And it says, we need to work around your 38. We need to push back on the lies, then crush the pedo trafficking narrative, then rebuild your image as a philanthropist. Now, I want to know who's doing that. Who's trying to rebuild Jeffrey Epstein's image, right? Well, we go ahead, we scroll down, and we see that Jeffrey Epstein sends something. He says, in any bar where drinking age is 18, and you see the participant is once again blacked out. But underneath it, in a separate file, we see Steve Bannon, a famous political figure, is in here, and he's saying the same thing. He says, first, we need to push back on the lies, then crush the trafficking narrative, then rebuild your image as a philanthropist. Guys, why did you censor out his name? Or, like, why was that censored at all? I don't understand. And I certainly don't understand why Jeffrey Epstein's name in this one is censored. So, Jeffrey's not censored in this one, but Bannon is, and then Bannon's not censored in this one, and Epstein is. And sometimes this creates the bizarre impression that they are censoring for victim names or for some like kind of victim status or for some reason. And then you see the other file and you're like, wait, why did you do this? It's just very poorly done throughout.
Bă, cred că legit că la cenzurarea fișierelor, mai ales că 4 milioane sau 5 milioane sau câte sunt în total, noi acum câte am primit? Am primit 3 milioane dacă nu mă înșel, nu? 3 milioane de Epstein file și mai îs încă o grămadă care trebuie puse. Îți dai seama că au lucrat niște oameni care probabil stăteau acolo, făceau asta toată ziua, probabil au fost obosiți și din greșeală au cenzurat altceva în loc să cenzureze ce trebuia să cenzureze. Ceea ce din punctul meu de vedere la niște chestii așa de grave, bă, e dăunător, coaie, e dăunător. Nu mai sunt, astea sunt toate? Păi nu zici cineva pe chat că mai îs încă, care nu a ieșit? Deci astea sunt toate, le avem pe absolut toate și trebuie să se uite cineva în 3000 de fișiere.
It's just something I wanted to comment on is not only did they once again not fully redact things because they were sloppy, but also like victims' names got stuck in this, like girls' names appear sometimes and like I'm not sure are they supposed to be redacted?
Am văzut că e și filmul Markiplier și vreau să mă duc să-l văd că am jucat Iron Lung, este un joc incredibil de bun și vă jucați-l dacă nu l-ați jucat, nu este în România Iron Lung. Mai sunt vreo 6 milioane în total, I think. Stai așa că ia căutăm pe net. Hai să vedem. Câte fișiere Epstein sunt în total? Deci până în prezent au fost făcute publice peste 4000 de pagini. What? Câte fișiere sunt în total și câte au fost făcute publice? Are we dead? Deci dosarele Epstein reprezintă peste 6 milioane de pagini de documente. Deci aveți dreptate pe chat, ați avut dreptate.
Here,
Hai,
they're not over
AI-ul
here.
e
I'm trying to
nebun.
figure out who it is. It's just kind of a mess. I needed to point that out. You know, other times we have things like this, like Brock Pierce, a co-founder of Tether, also known
Și
as
acum au fost făcute publice 3,5 milioane de pagini până acum.
the biggest
Așa.
stablecoin in the world. He sent a message to Jeffrey Epstein with the subject line Anastasia, and then it's just a bunch of redacted stuff with a few untitled
Wow.
JPEGs in here. And so, you know,
Ukraine is not my
thinking to
favorite
yourself,
country.
What is this? Is he sending some illicit media? Like what is this? Well, then we have this page.
Poți vedea ce
where it
mail-uri
wasn't
a dat Epstein
redacted.
pe
I put
ceva site ca și cum
that
e mail-ul
little
tău,
dark
n-am văzut.
square that I didn't know if this should have been redacted or not. But it's like a bunch of JPEGs.
Da, am
Now,
pus deja,
does
Vlad.
that contain victims? Is Brock Pierce sending photos of victims? I don't know because of the way the government did this. But underneath, it says, the Ukraine is now my favorite country, smiley face, Brock Pierce, with the subject line, Anastasia. I don't know what to make of that. I'm just saying, the redactions, like the way they did this is not good. But now let's return to Steve Bannon and his, we're gonna crush the trafficking narrative. Because this guy, oh boy, has been revealed in the files to being like Jeffrey.
De ce e cenzurat acolo ceva pe tabloul ăla? Ce tablou e ăla, bro? What the fuck?
Right-hand PR man. I mean, this guy was filming basically a documentary about Jeffrey Epstein in order to
into Jeffrey Epstein's emails now. Go look up Jmail now. It's like going to be the first thing that comes up. Basically, someone took all the House Oversight Committee emails that we know went between Jeffrey Epstein and a bunch of other creeps that he knew, and you can look at it and you can see the date that it was sent. Basically, they made it as easy to go through as possible. Look at that. They've even got it sorted by name. You can go find a creep and see how they've interacted with the world's most notorious. Like this one, where it's redacted, but we know that it was Alan Dershowitz, so it's in his category, begging Jeffrey Epstein not to believe that he asked for $1 million from Trump. What do you think? Is he telling the truth? You can log...
Wow, crazy că lumea a făcut așa ceva deja.
rehabilitate his image. And some of it has actually leaked to the public. It's been interesting to watch how that's been received. But the funny thing is that originally Jeffrey Epstein's plan was to just do a YouTube video, like an apology, like a old school 2016, turn on the camera for authenticity and saying, you know, he says, do you think I can do my own video interview and upload it to YouTube? No sandbagging, interview format, or like a diary piece. Steve Bannon says if you do an interview, it can't be like Johnny does a YouTube. It has to be amazingly professional and perfectly cut. Then Jeffrey Epstein responds, Woody, we assume Woody Allen, because they were close, said he would help edit. Not sure how to stage, what points to make. But better than trying to do an interview that I have no experience doing. Goal is to humanize the monster. Anything written carries little weight. To which Steve Bannon replies, yes, Jeffrey Epstein. Should it be an interview format, interviewed by me? They start talking about, like, how do we do this? Humor, apology, how did I get rich? Question mark topics. They're brainstorming. How do we trick the public into seeing me as more than a monster? Now, funny enough, right before this, Jeffrey Epstein asks about a dinner with Woody. And then he says, or too many pedos in one place.
Too many pedos in one
And you
place.
gotta love the self-awareness there. Now, I don't know what he meant by that. To be clear, I'm not making that accusation against Woody Allen. We'll talk about him in a second. That's Jeffrey Epstein saying that. I think what's interesting to point out, though, is how all these rich and powerful people are circling the wagons to try to protect Jeffrey Epstein's reputation, right? This is a guy who at this point has been known for years to have pled guilty to these 2008 charges. This was an open secret. And so Steve Bannon goes along, though, anyways, and he films this documentary. Now, what's interesting is he starts talking about the documentary, and he starts saying, I'm watching our second hour now. Guys were blown away. I didn't think it was as strong at the time, but I was wrong. Need huge part about threat of AI versus reality, threat of climate change. And this is where the notes start going back and forth of how can we get you to think of other things? So part of the conceit of this big interview of Jeffrey Epstein was to try to humanize him and actually present him as this genius, everyman, quirky guy with a few flaws, right? They knew they couldn't run away from the crimes. To quote, in Bannon's words, yes, 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 of course, but we must counter rapists who traffics in female children to be raped by world's most powerful, richest men. That can't be redeemed. You can't redeem the unredeemable. You are a lot of things which we will show, but you are not that. Bannon is aware that, like, they can't fully embrace the Epstein thing. They have to kind of make it about more than that. And if you see the YouTube clip going around, that's what that is. And it's been so interesting to watch the reaction because you see, even for people who've been prepped with the idea that this is basically propaganda, some of them still fall for it. They post things like, you know, oh, bro is casually confirming the world's conspiracies because he's talking about 2008. But guys, that's the whole deception. They're like trying to be like, hey, this guy, this horrible monster, he's going to tell you the secrets of the inside club. So you think more, that's the whole thing. That's how they're getting away with this. It's not some kind of, oh, he happened to want to talk about this. This is all premeditated. This has gone through revisions. They even called Jeffrey Epstein the smartest guy in the room.
Look, you're the smartest guy in the room, right?
Wow!
It's honestly ridiculous anyone believes the false conceit of, you're obviously the smartest man in the room. You could tell us the world's secrets. I mean, this guy, honestly, he talks about some of his engagements, like with the Rockefeller board, and he tries to say that owning a calculator is why he got that.
It was very advanced in those days to have a Texas Instrument calculator, where it could, by putting in the numbers, it would multiply for you to do square roots. And that was the first, and everyone who had a calculator was already advanced on Wall Street. The most important parts of business were really now going to calculations. Places like Rockefeller needed someone to say, look, we're entering a different world where numbers and the numbers of companies, portfolio management was going to be balanced. It was going to be statistical. Jeffrey, could you come on the board, potentially sit on the finance committee?
So we're honestly supposed to believe that Jeffrey Epstein got onto this prestigious Rockefeller board because he had a calculator, but also that he's the smartest guy in the room, the smartest man on Wall Street. And let's not talk about those horrific crimes he committed because, you know, he's not really such a bad guy after all. But it wasn't just Steve Bannon that was trying to humanize or giving advice on how to humanize Epstein. It was also Richard Branson, the famous billionaire. He was caught emailing Jeffrey Epstein saying, "Dear Jeffrey, it was really nice seeing you yesterday. The boys in water sports can't stop speaking about it. Anytime you are in the area, would love to see you as long as you bring your harem." I don't know, that's not that ambiguous, guys. I think we can imagine what that means. But anyways, he says, one, I think if Bill Gates was willing to say that you've been a brilliant advisor to him, that you slipped up many years ago by sleeping with a 17-and-a-half-year-old and were punished for it, that you've more than learned your lesson and have done nothing that's against the law since. And yes, it says, I am not joking about the password. This was in 2012, in September. Now that's important because a little bit later, Kimball Musk is emailing Boris Nikolic and Jeffrey Epstein, and he's talking to them about being connected with some redacted name and saying, I believe you both played a role, whatever that means. Now, whether this was at the party or, you know, right after their meeting in October, I don't know. But what's interesting is Boris responds. He says, just FYI, you better be nice to redacted. Jeffrey goes crazy when someone mistreats his girls/friends, so better be very nice to her. Kimball Musk responds, message received wide and clear. Then he says, seriously, I'm very happy with my time so far with Jennifer. She's great. Now, again, was that supposed to be a redacted name we just read? Like, I don't know. They've been redacting it in earlier emails. Then all of a sudden you just get Jennifer. I can't really figure that out. But what I can figure out is that a little while later, a few days later, Jeffrey Epstein gets an email. Now, we know Kimball credits the meetup and says Boris and Epstein were responsible in some way for this. But now Jeffrey Epstein's being emailed about Jen's schedule. Is that Jennifer? I mean, it seems like it because Jen's schedule for the rest of the year, and it seems like the assistant has copy and pasted Jen's response because she says, Sue, these would be dates in November, and then starts saying, you know, this, she can go to New York. She says the 29th to the 7th, she's free. Kimball to New York. Then she says, Kimball, Jen, London. Kimball, Jen, London to Morocco, ? Then she has a break, and then it's Jen, Kimball, St. Bart's. Assuming we're not sick of each other by the end of November. Now, I can't figure out why is she running this schedule about when she's hanging out with Kimball, who Jeffrey set her up with. Like, why is she running this by Elon Musk? To be clear, I don't know. You know, there could be, I guess, innocent explanations for this. Maybe, I don't know. But all I see are constant, powerful people either being introed to girls, talking about the harem, talking about beautiful ladies, and the FBI, they can't figure it out. They have no evidence to even investigate third parties. Why? I guess because they're rich and powerful. Around the world, we're seeing resignations. We're seeing people lose their status. But here in the United States, we've got like multiple presidents in the files. We've got the world's richest man in the files, several of the world's richest men in the files, and we just can't drum up any kind of evidence. It's just incredible to me.
Bă, sincer, nici nimeni nu-i tras la răspundere, nu se întâmplă absolut nimica. Nimic nu se întâmplă, e insane cât de protejați sunt oamenii care au fost implicați în căcaturile astea. Zero investigations, nimic, zero repercursiuni. Sincer, am auzit și teoria asta cum că și-a înșinat moartea pentru că știa că o să se ajungă aici și he's just living somewhere else. Avem și la noi în România ceva de genul? Nu știu, nu vreau să mă pronunț. No fucking idea.
Rich and powerful person and that...
Dar ce știm e că oamenii au fost români în Epstein Files. Deci, foarte probabil să existe peste tot în lume chestia asta, nu doar...
He's a podcast bro, he's a longevity expert, and actually, funny enough, I read his book, and that's gonna come into play here in a second because, oh boy, did I get some additional context. But let's start here with something that Peter Attia sent Jeffrey Epstein. He says, subject, got a fresh shipment. And then Epstein responds, me too, and there's a completely redacted image. Is that a girl? Is this bad redactions? You know, we don't know, although we'll find out in a second because later Peter responded to this. But Peter says, please tell me you found that picture online. Jeffrey responds, got a fresh shipment. Afraid not. Peter responds, you know the biggest problem with becoming friends with you. The life you lead is so outrageous, yet I can't tell a soul. Why, Peter?
Wow, what the fuck?
Why can't you tell a soul? Why don't you tell us now? Now that it's all out in the open, why don't you tell us why you can't tell a soul the secrets or the life that Epstein leads? And then we get another redacted photo.
Please tell me that's not where you actually are. Dacă cine știe cine era în poza respectivă încât l-a făcut pe ăsta așa de speriat.
And then some more images and Peter says, please tell me that's not where
Sau
you
ce era în
actually
poza
are.
respectivă.
And Jeffrey says, you can see the gym in the middle, just me and 4. And Peter says, I think you might have a more interesting life than the Dos Equis guy. Is this off the coast of France? No, it's my island in the Caribbean near St. Thomas. If you go to Google Earth and type in Little St. James. Beautiful. Isn't that nice? Behind closed doors, it's beautiful. In public, you know, we'll hear about what a monster this guy is, right? But behind closed doors, when nobody's watching, oh, it's beautiful. There's some other stuff Peter Attia said, which I'm not going to get into. I don't think it's very, There's some other stuff Peter...
He's indeed low carb.
Attia said, which I'm not going to...
Still awaiting results on the gluten content, though.
Get into. I don't think it's very, appropriate for medical professionals to be saying such things, but... this wasn't all business, right? This wasn't just doctor-patient kind of stuff. There's a lot of guy talk, a lot of banter between the fellas about ladies. And maybe that's why Peter Attia says that hopefully Jeffrey Epstein is in town when I'm back in 2 weeks. I go into Jeffrey Epstein withdrawal when I don't see him. So guys, these two were close. I mean, apparently so close that, Peter Attia goes into withdrawal when he doesn't see him. Peter Attia says, are you on island? Jeffrey Epstein says, P Beach, probably Palm Beach. And he says, what do you do when you get there? Jeffrey Epstein, guess. Peter Attia, besides that,
Bro, guess, besides that, omul era in. Poate și el făcea exact același lucru.
They're not even trying to hide it, guys. This is barely code at this point. What do you do? Guess. Well, besides that, Jeffrey, we know what you do, right? So it's so funny that the FBI's like, we don't know. We can't tell what's out there. We have no evidence, right? No evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties and then proceed to dump on us a ton of evidence. At least to investigate, right? I'm not saying these people are guilty. Obviously, all of them deny, don't admit, blame other people, say other people are responsible for everything. So that is taken as a given. I am not accusing anyone here. I'm just saying, seems like we got a few leads here, fellas. Some people to look at. Now, I want to address the fact that Peter Attia has actually responded to this whole debacle. He says the following email is what I sent my team last night. I sent a similar version to my patients as well. You put your trust, your credibility, your hard work, what we built together, and I take that responsibility seriously. You deserve a complete and honest account of what did and did not happen. I apologize. I did not get this out sooner. I wanted to be thorough. He says, I was not involved in any criminal activity. My interactions had nothing to do with his abuse or exploitation of anyone. I was never on his plane, never on his island, never present at any parties. That said, I apologize and regret putting myself in a position where emails, some of them embarrassing, tasteless, and indefensible, are now public. So it's this apology. You know, he addresses some of the things, and he says that some of it's just banter, right? Like I said, it's just guy talk, whatever that means. He claims that his got a fresh shipment was in reference to a photograph of bottles of metformin, and then Jeffrey responded with a photograph of an adult woman. I responded with crude, tasteless banter. He says one line in that exchange about his life being outrageous and me not being able to tell anyone is being interpreted as awareness of wrongdoing. That's not how I meant it at all. What I was referring to poorly and flippantly was the discretion commanded by those socials and professional circles. The idea you don't talk about who you meet. I don't know, Peter. This seems like revisionist history. A little bit, I mean, personally, to me, as I'm doing this, you know, third hand, right? Just from the outsider perspective. Now, Peter says he did ask Jeffrey about his 2008 conviction, because all this happened afterwards, right? He characterized it as prostitution-related charges. In 2018, I learned that this was grossly minimized. I was incredibly naive to believe him, and then later explains that in 2018,
Postarea de pe
November,
4chan, am văzut că a apărut o postare în 4chan de pe dosare, n-am văzut postarea.
read the Miami Herald investigative
Puneți-o
article, told him he
pe
did accept
media dacă o
responsibility
aveți.
for what he did, and said he even asked Epstein to provide therapy to Epstein's victims, which is an interesting approach to have here. Now, the funny thing is, there are some more emails between Peter Attia that we need to read, because remember that he said he read this 2018 article from the Miami Herald. I believe it's this one by Julia K. Brown in November 28th. It's about Jeffrey Epstein assembling a large cult-like network of underage girls. But in December, Peter Attia says, home is very good, work stressful, making some changes. He asks him, what's the fallout from the recent story? Apparently talking about the Miami Herald. Now, maybe I just didn't see the emails, you know, that where he was demanding accountability. I don't know what that's about, but Jeffrey Epstein says same as usual, just tougher. Peter Attia says legally any change. Jeffrey Epstein, 0. So, you know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe this whole you got to provide therapy to, you know, these victims happened. I haven't seen it yet. I definitely could see it. But it's just kind of shocking. I just kind of don't buy it. Like the whole, is there any change legally? That more sounds like you're covering yourself. I mean, just to be honest. But maybe I could look past all of that if not for the thing we're about to see, which just in my mind is maybe the worst thing I've seen in the files. Not for its, you know, explicitness, the amount of simping that people did for Jeffrey Epstein. Now they all say, oh, it was a personal mistake, blah, blah, blah. I regret it. I didn't look into it enough. But the level is just, you've never seen anything like it. So remember I said I read a book by Peter Attia. It was called Outlive, and he's supposed to be this doctor who knows a lot about longevity. So he writes it, and I picked it up because at the rate we're getting rid of these crimes, I need to live forever in order to try to stop some of these scams. But as I pick up this book, and one of the things in the book is Peter Attia kind of reflecting internally about how he's kind of been a bit, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a bit of a psycho in his life, and he needed to focus on family stuff. And so he kind of, it's almost a confessional of some embarrassing things in his life. And honestly, it comes off as very vulnerable, very self-reflective. You know, he's this doctor telling other people what to do, but he's not a very good patient. That's kind of how it comes off. And one of the stories is awful. I won't go too much into it, but basically his son has this horrible medical emergency. It's described in this book like this. A few months ago, Tuesday, July 11th, 2017, that date is important. At 5:45 to be exact, I received a call from Jill, my wife. She was in an ambulance with our infant son. Now, again, I'm not going to get into the details here because, it's tragic, and I'm not trying to bring that into it. What is relevant is that Peter Attia talks about how he stayed in New York and didn't show up because he was, quote, busy with his important work. Even today, just thinking about what happened, I feel nauseous about my behavior. I can't believe I did that to my family. Now, at the time I read that and I was like, well, you know, it's at least as good that you self-reflected on that. It's horrible, but, you know, yeah, you were a bit of a psycho. But what's crazy, I mean, now we find out some of the important work, I mean, it's a little unclear, but some of the important work may have been Jeffrey Epstein, which is just, oh, it's so dark to imagine. Remember, he says July 11th, 2017 is when this all happened. And then he says he did not come home to San Diego until Friday the following week, 10 days later. So July 11th, 2017, 2 days after this happens, he's talking to Jeffrey Epstein. And they seem to be coordinating about something. Sure, what time? Jeffrey Epstein, 9:30. Peter Attia responds, sure, I can come earlier. Also, if you have a hard stop at 10, let me know. You're hanging out with Jeffrey? I don't even know what to say. This is out of pocket. I mean, there's no explanation for this. I mean, I didn't see this in the response from Peter. I mean, maybe he thinks he addresses it because he already admitted that was like scummy. But that is just, there's a reason that didn't make it in the book, is what I'm trying to say. I didn't see that in the book when I read it. You know, I was actually, you know, one of the things I needed to do, my important work was seeing or talking to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, isn't that weird? Like, that's the simping that I'm talking about. These people love this guy. Or that's how it seems to me. Like, what are all these rich and powerful people doing, protecting him, missing emergencies for Jeffrey, fawning over Jeffrey, asking for Jeffrey's harem, saying that...
Am văzut, uite, pus ceva aici. Brexit just the beginning. 2016, când s-a întâmplat Brexit-ul, cu adevărat.
Their biggest problem is the life they lead is so outrageous they can't tell us. So, I mean, what is going on here? And is it true they all didn't know, right? Because, you know, I'm reading these documents, and it's hard to say who exactly knew what, when. But I don't believe, remember, they're all denying it, I don't believe nobody knew, right? Clearly, some people knew what was going on. And there's all this kind of coded language in the files where they talk about this stuff almost in like a nudge kind of way. I mean, here's some Woody Allen stuff. He was in the files. He says his business office, if you can make out the check to me, it looks very bad because then it looks like a gift to me. He says that to Epstein. He says, I don't want to be one of your women, or should I say, girls. And what's that? Oh, how do we...
What?
Come on, guys. Woody says, I would be much more expensive than your girls. You wouldn't be able to afford me. Jeffrey responds, yes, the price to pay would be too high. Woody says, this will be a beautiful friendship. And then Jeffrey says, as long as I follow orders, smiley face. Woody Allen sends a message saying Woody says the exact same thing, but in a dirtier way.
Hey, yo.
Way. Jeffrey responds, what did he say? Woody Allen, are you kidding? I can't put it in writing. I mean, no evidence? No evidence. How? Come on. I think I see a little bit of evidence. I'm squinting, but I think I can see a little bit of evidence. I mean, guys, like Jeffrey Epstein right here, where he's talking to a guy, he says, Paris with Woody, and the person responds, for le pedophile convention. And Jeffrey says, I think file is the plural. I mean, no evidence. I mean, is that no evidence? It's nothing. We don't even want to question
what
these people. There's no investigations going on. So, yeah, it's honestly really sad to see how, look, I'm not saying people around the world are having crazy consequences, but a few people are resigning, thank goodness. You know, a few people are at least facing a little bit of scrutiny, but here Elon Musk lays out the playbook, apparently for our guys. You know, we admit nothing, we deny everything, and we blame others. We just push the spotlight onto other people. And unfortunately, that's what you've seen the whole time from all the people in the files. You know, all of them say, oh, I was so happy these files came out. It's about shining accountability and justice for the victims. But I had nothing to do with it. Okay, so then where's the justice for the victims? So nobody, you know, all of you say somebody else had something to do with it, but everybody says nobody had anything to do with it. The FBI says they don't have any other, you know, investigations, any other kind of leads, despite the fact we have one of the procurers of the women just walking free, apparently, like no charges against him. Have we investigated him? I mean, it's just shocking how much the Epstein files show the powerful, how they protect their own, how so many of them knew what was going on, to the extent they found out later, a lot of them tried to protect Epstein, like literally make PR campaigns for his reputation. And this is a dark look at the state of the world, honestly, because Epstein happened a while ago, but the reason everyone cares is because there's other Epsteins around, right? There's other people evading accountability all the time. There's other people that this band of billionaires and power brokers and PR people, even lawmakers, they circle the wagons and protect their own to the point you can never get accountability for anything. So anyway, that's it. It's a hard look.
Am mai găsit asta. Fete din România în dosarele Epstein, peste 800 de menționări în extrasele din corespondență privată a miliardarului. Așa. Corespondența lui Efrin, extrase lui Jeffrey Epstein, extrase din dosare. Bună, Jeffrey, îmi pare rău că trebuie să mai stau în România, mă voi întoarce la New York luni, 23 ianuarie, m-am operat la menisc la începutul săptămânii trecute, acum mă simt mai bine, dar trebuie să scot firele la sfârșitul săptămânii. Deci ăsta este Ion Nicola, care făcea frecvent naveta între București și New York. Îl cunoștea pe miliardarul care păsese la cale o întreagă rețea de trafic de fete. Nicola își cere scuze că nu poate ajunge la New York, ok. Asta este Corina Tarniță. Aveți aici informații pentru fata din România care va primi $10.000. Cele două fete sunt amândouă de la Universitatea din Iași din România. Este cea mai veche universitate din România, în orașul în care a fost capitala noastră cu secole în urmă. Te rog, anunță-mă dacă Jeffrey are nevoie de informații suplimentare. Yes, I do know her. More Facebook friends. As far as I know, she's modeling in New York. You met her or you like her? Do you know Andreea Diaconu? Un alt mesaj face trimitere la Roxana, care este din România, pe jumate braziliancă, în vârstă de 20 de ani. Din România, Roxana, pe jumate braziliancă, 20 de ani, se află chiar acum în Paris, numai bine, Daniel. Și mai văzusem, stați așa un pic, aia cu profesor din Iași. What?
An Austrian-born professor of mathematics and biology and close confidant of Epstein said to a redacted individual that it is believed that to be Seth Lloyd, a quantum information scientist at professor of Massachusetts. We should explore the biological consequences of time.
What?
Dude. An Austrian-born professional.
It would be amusing to calculate the rate of evolution of a population or a mutant that can travel in time. Cred că astea sunt vrăjeli, baloane. Cred că sunt baloane astea. Azi mongol, e black pill as fuck. Da, căutam pe TikTok, că pe TikTok văzusem că a pus cineva exact fișierul ăla cu profesorul din Iași. Cum se numește din Iași? Ziceți-mi. UB, CT, UBT, UB, nu știu cum. Uite ce am văzut astăzi. Curul 2 înapoi. Cu aia îți dai seama, dacă ar fi fost Georgescu, Călin Georgescu, băgat în Epstein Files, sigur ar fi zis curiștii. El era acolo ca să-l salveze, să-l pună pe drumul cel bun, să-l facă să creadă în Dumnezeu. El este salvarea noastră. Până și pe Epstein, și om bun la suflet. A vrut să-l salveze până și pe Epstein, nu doar pe noi românii. Mă lași. Uite, am găsit asta cu Ghislaine Maxwell.
Believe this. I was reading through the Epstein files, and suddenly Joe Biden's name comes up. As somebody who loves and admires Joe Biden, I am shocked by this. I really hope this isn't true. I really, really hope.
Crazy. 10 ani și 11 ani. Na. Bro, ce facultate? Cum se numește facultatea aia din Iași, bă? Universitatea UB, UV, UBT, URM, cum dracu se numește? Ziceți-mi să caut, că vreau, chiar sunt curios acum, m-ați făcut curios. UAIC, așa, bravo. UAIC, Iași Epstein Files. Am găsit, cred că am găsit. Iași Epstein Files. Tot nu găsesc cumva. Doamne, nu găsesc TikTok-ul ăla, bro. Trebuie să-l caut neapărat. Luci Madrid, bro. Luci Madrid. Yo.
goyim deal in the real world. You behave just like the goyim. Obviously a polite goyim. They did a great job of closing the most, at least for the goyim. No, goyim in abundance. Just go hang out in the lobby, that's for the goyim. By the way, here's my goy shelf. Oh, please wire money to my bank account named Baal, the biblical enemy of Jesus Christ that is known for child sacrifice. These are between this guy and many of our politicians. Just to confirm, it's going to 100% be a night, right? Jeffrey here working with $25 million with the Rothschilds. I'm sure this isn't a big deal. Messages between $1 million with the Rothschilds. I'm sure this isn't a big deal. Messages between Epstein and the Rothschilds about Ukraine. This is a message from a girl that gave birth on Epstein's island. Only got 10 to 15 minutes to hold the baby before they took her. I want her
Asta ziceam, exact asta ziceam.
back. That's horrific. All of the theories we thought as children, all of the movies we watched, are even worse than we imagined. Comment your thoughts, follow me for the real updates.
Bro. Banca Transilvania, Iași. Here is the information for the girl in Romania, from Romania who will receive 10K. Corina. Studente din Iași menționate în file. Dr. Iulian Rusu, profesor la Universitatea Tehnică din Iași, Facultatea de Chimie Industrială. Dear Jeff, I finally heard from Chuck Harper, who is visiting anthropological sites in South Africa at the moment and has been a little hard to reach. Regarding Eastern Europe, not too much luck. These are the names I got. And I don't know any of them, so probably not useful. And Casac, profesor, Ioana Carmen Popescu, tot profesor, Dr. Iulian Rusu, tot profesor Ștefan Trausan Matu, profesor în București, Computer Science. Corina Tarință este o matematiciană și biolog teoretician și română-american cunoscută pentru activitatea sa în domeniul biologiei, matematici și al sistemelor adaptive complexe. A câștigat Olimpiada Națională de Matematică a României de 3 ori. S-a mutat în Statele Unite pentru a-și continua studiile, obținând diploma de licență în 2006, așa, și a ajuns să fie scouting pentru Epstein. Wow, o profesoară, coaie, o profesoară sau ăsta, zic cum se numește, olimpică la matematică. God damn, caută în Gmail. Da, nu, oricum, trebuie să facem un live în care literalmente să fim the debunker când vine vorba de chestiile astea cu românii. Da, bă, dezgustat.